Hello, everyone. I'm Mystery.
And I am Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we are the Duality of Man.
As I'm sure everybody's aware, there's a current banking crisis going on in the Western world, and we're here to talk about it because, well, quite frankly, it's a bit concerning. More than a bit, actually.
I, on the other hand, am mostly in the laughing and fiddling as Rome burns stage of the reaction, folks, because I I can't help but find it amusing. I know it's blackly amusing, I know it's darkly amusing, but we live in clown world, so our only two options are to go insane or to laugh at it. And my solution, I suppose, as with many things, is why not both?
Well, if these things were just going to fail, um, quite frankly, uh, I would also be laughing. But it's a bit of a problem. But first, let's um, let's start by going over exactly what happened. Now, to the best to the best of my recollection, it first started with the Silicon Valley Bank in California. And I think there are also in a couple other
Which,
states as
which,
well.
which that
And
in and of itself is very much that in and of itself is very much meme worthy, is it not?
yeah, so Silicon Valley Bank, they were the bank of choice for a lot of tech startups, a lot of billionaires, millionaires, a lot of famous people who lived in California.
Your Zuckerberg, your
I think
Bezoses, etc., etc.
I think Oprah had money there as well.
Well, again, I'm in the absurdist Schadenfreude portion of the evening, I suppose.
Yeah, and okay, so they started to collapse. And apparently, what happened was uh, they Silicon Valley Bank was heavily invested into treasury bonds from the government, and they had bought a lot of these bonds years ago, and I believe they were bought at an interest rate of like 1.5 or something. But because of
The government's
inflation,
not planning on paying up, and therefore, oops, there goes the neighborhood.
now what happened was the federal treasury, because of inflation, has started to raise interest rates. And so when they did that, they were now selling bonds at like I believe 5% interest rate. And so their bonds that they bought at 1.5 interest rates were basically now worthless. So they decided to sell off their bad investment and try and raise some capital. But I believe what happened was that some really in the know people got wind of this, and so a bunch of people started trying to take their money out of the bank. Only problem was that because the bank had invested it and then lost it during this bad investment, they didn't actually have everybody's
They
money or
can't
enough
cash
collateral to
out
cover
people.
everybody's money.
Yeah.
And what else was there? Yeah, there was a run at the bank where you know people were literally in long ass lines trying to get into the bank so they could get their money out until the bank just basically collapsed. And then the federal government came in and said that they're basically going to take over the bank to ensure that people can get their money back. And
Oh no.
Silicon Valley Bank is FDIC insured, but the thing is, FDIC insurance only goes up to $250,000. So if you have more in the bank, you can't get all the rest of it back. So a lot of these companies, these businesses, these billionaires, they were completely screwed. However, the government is going to come in and say that we're going to basically foot the bill so all these people can get their money back. And the government,
Oh no.
yes,
Where
and the
have we
government,
seen this before? Cough, cough, 2008
yeah.
recession
But
cough.
here's the thing: the government, because it didn't actually have this money, basically just going to pump money into the bank so that people can get their money back. But the government pumping money out is going to increase the money supply, which is going to
In
cause
other
more
words,
inflation.
money printer go burr, society collapses.
Yeah, and that's going to cause the Fed to raise the interest rate again, I'm sure, which is what happened to make the situation
Vicious
in the first
cycle of
place.
doom.
Not only that, but like the as far as I'm aware, the FDIC insurance uh, limit was made a long time ago, like decades ago, back before back then $250,000 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But now when we live in the age where people have billions, uh, that's really not helping
Yeah,
anyone.
it's almost like we should tie these things to spending power and not raw currency or something. But, you know, never mind.
Yeah. See, we have Ed Brewer in the chat. Hello, Ed. Yeah, so not only was their bank, whose name escapes me, but they're basically a crypto bank, and they also began to fall. And then I believe it was Monday. I believe a handful of other banks in the U.S. also began seeing a massive downturn. And then on Tuesday, as I recall, they started seeing a sharp upturn because the government got involved again. But they started rising so high so fast that they actually had to halt trading on the market for these banks. And that is a sign of extreme market volatility, which is basically people outside the US going looking at this and saying that the US financial system right now is a very bad bet.
Guys, we've done this once already in my lifetime, thank you, and I'm only 27. Like, guys, we did this once. We did this once. Remember the 2008 mortgage crisis? Remember the Great Recession? Remember the Occupy movement that made all of the investors shit the bed when it happened? Well, that was in a fairly stable time period of 2008. What do you think? What do you think in the age of Antifa and BLM and BAM and all the rest of the ideological terrorists? Let's not beat around the bush. What do you think Occupy is going to look like this time around? Before it was the 60s style sit-ins and the being very obstructive in a mostly harmless way. This day and age has, again, the violent anarcho-communist thugs of various descriptions. So, what is today's Occupy movement going to look like?
I don't know, but apparently a lot of the chief executives at Silicon Valley Bank, before it collapsed, they sold off a bunch of their stock in the company while it's still before it crashed. So they were able to make off with quite a bit of money before everything hit the fan.
Golden parachutes. Where have we? I'm feeling like a broken record. Where have we seen this horrible this practice that will make nothing better, and make everything worse before? Ah.
Yeah, apparently they were highly into ESG and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So much so that I believe for a long period of time they didn't even have someone for risk management to come up with scenarios and plans to help avert certain risks. Kind of like the shit that's happening now, but they did have
So
a bunch of
even so
diversity,
even
equity, and
banks
inclusion
are
officers.
subject to go woke, go broke. That's I'm I'm I find that oddly comforting, actually.
Yeah, I believe their London branch may have had a risk management offer, but she certainly wasn't doing her job. I believe she was organizing pride days for the company and lesbian visibility days and things of that nature. Just
Well, I'm sure her office was in London, which means I'm sure that she was a labor activist, which means I'm sure that she was buddy buddy with Sadiq Khan. So I'm not color me unsurprised. Granted, most of what I know of the politics across the pond comes secondhand, but would it surprise anyone to learn that this woman was a Jeremy Corbyn supporter? Because it wouldn't surprise me none.
Yeah, and so I believe it was just today I saw that a bunch of banks in Europe were also collapsing because a lot of the financial markets in Europe are closely tied to the U.S. So things start you know falling here, it's definitely going to affect them there. But it just goes to show that the Occupy movement, they were right to be upset, but they shouldn't have targeted Wall Street. What they should have done is gone to D.C. and protest there and basically pressure the politicians into not giving them a bailout.
They were actually about to, and coincidentally, that's around the time that the movement splintered between the right wing libertarian side of Occupy and the left wing well, I'm not going to say pseudo libertarian part of Occupy, but basically the left wing splintered first, with the authoritarian left and the libertarian left splintering off, and then those two, their splintering essentially caused the right wing libertarian types to splinter off into their own thing, and unsurprisingly, once Occupy became a political movement rather than a sort of all ages, all colors, all creeds movement, it became less effective, and then became irrelevant, and then splintered basically off into the ANCAP libertarian style sort of pseudo Ayn Rand people over in one corner, and the Antifa types in the other corner.
I mean,
If I
I
had a
wonder
penny for
how.
every movement that was sabotaged by basically political infighting, I could probably pay off their debt for them at this point.
Now that basically the initial cause of the Antifa of the Occupy movement has you know triggered once again, do you think that people are going to go back to protesting the banks, or is Antifa still going to be targeting Christian parents?
Well, see, here's the thing. For all that Occupy did eventually sort of by way of splintering lead to both the extreme like ANCAPs and the extreme anarcho-communists, um, it was mostly peaceful back in the day. It was like a 60s style sit-in most of the time. Um,
Yeah, I remember seeing it
Whereas
on the news.
now we have various strains of violent thugs for various political causes. So I'm like, I think the coming protests are probably going to make the George Floyd on and off 6 month summer of love there look like uh look like a rendition of We Are the World.
You know, if you think about it, all of this can be traced back to Washington, and I think the Biden administration specifically. Now, I know that Trump did spend a lot of money during COVID to try and you know, give people money while the economy was in
On
trouble because of
pause.
COVID. Yeah, but afterwards and everything, that was only for 1 year. Biden's been in power for going on 3 years now, and he
Two of
has
which
not.
he extended the lockdown unnecessarily in, but whatever.
Not only that, but he also gave out a lot of money, and his budget omnibus bills have been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Like the man will not stop spending money.
And
Combine that with
let's
all the
not
money
even
that's coming
blame
to.
let's not even blame Biden, who is basically at this point a very confused corpse that doesn't know it's dead yet. It's the fact that his administration is almost to a man, like right down the line establishment stooges.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
don't
I
have
say Biden, but obviously I mean the administration
yeah,
because
the administration. But point being, I don't think this problem. I'm not saying this wouldn't have happened under Trump, but I am saying it probably would have been less severe under Trump. And
Yeah,
what's more, Trump would actually have a proper reaction to it, and he wouldn't exacerbate the problem by trying to bail them out. Probably.
yeah. I mean, because the inflation thing really hit. I believe what was it like? The inflation really hit was like 2022. It was when inflation really hit
Mhm.
people, and I feel like Donald Trump was a lot more fiscally responsible than the current administration, and I especially think that he like would not have just kept making these like massive like $1 trillion budgets.
Well,
And also I
he was also a populist outsider, or at least he tried to be one. And one of the things he was very good at is everyone knows that he was like a 90s style Democrat and just, transitioned over to the Republican Party eventually. But the thing is, he didn't his policies and his viewpoints didn't really change much from being a 90s style Democrat then to being a 2020 Republican. So,
I think they've changed a little, but I can definitely see like the '90s Democrat roots within his
what
platform
I
policy.
mean is he's not particularly attached to the elite bubble.
Yeah,
Because the elites have never liked him, and so he's always been on the fringes of it. Which means he is at least, if not smart enough to know, able to read a room enough to know what people think of the 2008 recession and so on. And therefore, I can't imagine him doing literally the exact same thing that the Obama administration did back in the day to exacerbate the problem and so on. I think he would look at this situation and go, okay, so this is what they did in the previous financial crisis of, the previous version of this. Let's do literally anything else ever.
yeah. I also think that you know he wouldn't have gotten us involved in the Russian Ukrainian war.
Yeah,
I don't think the war would have happened if he was
yeah,
still
I
president.
don't
Honestly,
care, and I don't think most people in America actually care or not. Like, the worst you can say is Putin is kind of a scary dude. Well, newsflash, guys, he's always been kind of a scary dude, and Zelensky is also kind of a scary dude. So let's not act like we're choosing the noble freedom fighter versus the icky, former KGB fascist dude. We're essentially, what we have is two tin pot dictators who were just arguing over who gets the largest slice of the East European pie.
yeah, and I don't know people who don't care about the war, but they should care a bit more because we're pumping billions of dollars into a war that essentially has nothing to do with us.
Yeah, but that that
And
that's the thing. It has nothing to do with us, and no one at home actually cares. So in theory, why are we doing it? Why are we funding any of it?
the rhetoric around the war shows as if they talk as if there's absolutely no room to negotiate with Russia, which means that the war is going to go on ad infinitum until somebody wins.
And given that both countries are on the verge of collapse anyway, it's highly probable that neither of them will win, and that both countries will simply collapse before anyone wins.
Okay, so you know the current banking situation is a lot of people scared and they're wondering, which banks could potentially fall next. Should I get my money out of the bank while I still can? And that fear is causing insecurity in the financial market. And, there are people from the government going on TV and saying the situation is under control. We've got things handled. There's no need to run to the bank and withdraw your money, which If you've been paying attention
That
to the
totally isn't
administration, that
a jarring thing to say or anything there, anything there, Joe. Sorry.
but it's kind of a paradox because if you don't withdraw your money, you know, the bank could collapse because nobody knows which one's going to fall next, and you could lose your money. I mean, but a lot of accounts, a lot of the individual
Well,
personal
it's
accounts
a
would,
self-fulfilling prophecy. The banks are falling because everyone is scared, and everyone is scared because the banks are falling, kind of thing.
yeah, a lot of the smaller accounts, might be able to get their money back due to the FDIC insurance, but you know, it's a government system. Those things are infamously slow. You know, you may not be able to get your money back for like what, a week, a month, 3 months, and in that time, you're still gonna have to pay for shit.
Yeah, what are you using that money for, and how are you using it? And if you're using it on something important, like say bills or keeping a roof over your head, oof, that's that might be a bit jarring.
Yeah, so the government is
Please
doing a
revisit the
great job of
duality of man and homelessness for more information on this potential topic.
yeah, so the government's not doing a great job of reassuring people, and with the recent news coming from Europe, it just seems that our whole financial system is in a very precarious position, and a lot of people are unsure what to do because you know you take your money out, you cause the bank. If everybody takes the money out, the bank will collapse, or the bank could collapse due to its own bad investments, and you don't have your money, so you're screwed.
Honestly, of the two, I'd prefer if they just let the bank flop because the more they try to pump money into it so that it doesn't fall, the larger the bubble gets, and eventually the bigger the pop is going to be, and the larger ramifications.
I think that we should
If they
have just.
just let Silicon Valley Bank fall, for example, that hurts the Silicon Valley billionaires. Too bad, so sad for you. You can blow your nose with the $100 bills you have from your other supplies of money, but it wouldn't have really affected anything. But now that the government is getting involved, they're weaving webs that tie everything together, and in so doing, not sharing the stability, but sharing the problem. just like in it, just like in that other financial crisis that happened when I was still a little kid. Oh Jesus!
People say the nine scariest words in the English languages. I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah, no, that's up there.
I mean, when you think about it, we should have let the banks fall back in 2018 because even as bad as sorry, not 2018, 2008. What the hell am I thinking? Um, but back in 2008, we should have let them fall then because even as bad as that was, we were still in a better position than we are now. Because think about it, the economy really went bad in 2008 because of the bank collapse. The thing is, our economy was already bad now, and this is the cherry
Yeah,
on
the
top.
straw that might break the camel's back. And then, of course, once again, you bring in the cultural slash socio-political element of it, where back then all we had was Occupy. Now we have Antifa and their ilk. So yeah, I again, they summer of loved, quote unquote, over one person's death, George Floyd. What the hell do you think they're gonna do when faced with an Occupy-sized reason to protest? Does anyone remember the Chaz? Because maybe coming soon to a city near you.
One can't really ignore the politics of the situation because we mentioned before that they were heavily into diversity, equity, and inclusion and the ESG score thing. Well, they're based in California, And in California, it basically requires you to have diversity requirements for your board of directors in your company. So they, by law, were had to focus on that type of thing. And that just goes to show
Has anyone done any
bad
more
policies
research into
leads
the
to.
possibility of nuking the San Andreas Fault to push California into the ocean?
I don't know how that will work.
All I'm saying is a few Tsar bombas interlaced in the San Andreas Fault line, set off at just the right moment, would break California from the rest of the continental United States. It would sail off next to Chile, and then we'd all be fine.
But let's talk a bit about the knock-on effects of this, because if these companies lose all their money, they can't pay their employees. Their employees then aren't spending anything on the they aren't pumping the money that they don't have back into the economy, which means that things like taxes aren't going to be paid properly.
Which, to be fair, places like San Francisco and LA were a financial house of cards to begin with. Because, I mean, for fuck's sake, you can spend $50,000 a month on just rent for like a 1 bedroom apartment over there. That's more than most people pay on their mortgage in a year of like a large house.
And these like the tech sector that you know California plays a big part in. They were already laying off employees. Like I know that Facebook and Twitter and a bunch of other companies
The
were
day in the
laying off.
lifers.
Yeah, they were laying off tens of thousands of employees. And I believe Facebook announced another round of layoffs. So the tech sector was already in a crunch. But if they have their money tied up in Silicon Valley Bank, that's going to hit them even harder.
And again, there is a part of me that is enjoying the clown world's Schadenfreude of that. I am choosing to look on the bright side. The, I will allow the chaos that is going to ensue as long as those posh cunts have to deal with it first and worst.
I don't think it's really going to collapse though, because obviously the government is intervening.
Oh yes, I
But,
forgot. We're doing 2008 again. God damn it. I can't even enjoy the prospect of like Zuckerberg and Bezos having to suffer this. God damn it.
yeah, and you know, it's gonna be one argument that I've heard for why the government shouldn't allow these collapse. The regions, all fall. Like four big national in the country, which means everybody's going to be banking with four companies, giving them an overwhelming amount of power.
Well, I mean that was the case. That was pretty much the case already. It went from like 6 down to 4 is all that happened.
Yeah, but now companies, banks are starting to get political. Like they are freezing people's accounts and ending their accounts for
Yeah,
political reasons.
the left wing equivalent of the right wing Hayes Code from back in the day. ESG is basically just the Hayes Code, but on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah, and if it's only four banks, now it requires us four people to get into a room and agree this person isn't allowed to have a bank account anymore.
Yeah, we have decided they are immoral and therefore no money for you.
So yeah, that's that would be a problem. But it really is a difficult situation because you'll want to see the system cor- correct itself, but if you do, you could inadvertently be paving the way for financial tyranny. And it really would have been better if things fell back in 2008, because things were less violent then and things weren't as political then.
Yeah,
It would have.
social justice wasn't really an entity on the world stage as yet anywhere but academia, and it hadn't had the chance to metastasize to anything more important than academia yet.
it would have hurt, but it would have been survivable.
Yeah, and we would be living in a boom phase right now instead of a prolonged like decade and a half worth of, oh dear, I hope the entire millennial generation will actually be able to launch as a generation and not completely disappear, but I doubt it.
Yeah, and right now, I don't think our current um, executive administration is capable of handling this, because it would require them to do things, one, they don't want to do, and two, that their base doesn't want them to do. But
And
it's
three,
the
that
right
they
thing to
have
do.
at least tangentially a moral objection to doing, which is the clenching thing. Because that's the thing. This is why I will always argue that true believers are worse than opportunists, because opportunists can be reasoned with. True believers, because they believe their own bullshit, because they actually believe that the things they say are moral, and the things they say are immoral. They don't care about their own personal benefit. They will actually destroy themselves out of their definition of the greater good, quote unquote.
Yeah,
Not that Joe Biden himself has any beliefs whatsoever at the moment, because he is a corpse who just doesn't realize he's dead yet.
yeah. I mean, I've heard that the crypto market, things like Bitcoin, are doing very well. So if you have some Bitcoin, that's good for you. Yeah, I've been meaning to get into Bitcoin, but I don't have that much exposable income really.
Yet nobody does, because again, the economy was already kind of meh, and now it's circling a very dark drain that may or may not be the Scylla from Greek mythology.
I mean, gas is almost $4. I mean,
Which, to be fair, went down from a couple of months ago when I think it peaked at 5 as the
yeah,
national average.
it peaked at 5. Now it's almost 4. But still, I remember when it was like a buck 20 something.
Yeah, yeah, I remember when I was a kid it was like $2.
My parents thought that was high.
Yeah, mine did too, actually. And now here we sit at it being like between 3 and 4 seems to be where it, like, that seems to be where it settles. That's not that's not a high or a low. It just between like 350 and $4 is tends to be the like new it's the new normal, to use a horrible, annoying phrase.
Have you heard about the Have you heard about the deals that China has been making?
Oh no, what now?
Well, there was recently a deal between, I believe it was Saudi Arabia and Iran, that was brokered by the Chinese, and I believe Saudi Arabia is going to start selling its oil in the Chinese. I forget what the name of China's currency is, but they're going to be using Chinese currency to sell their oil now instead of the U.S. dollar.
Um, isn't it yen, or is that Japan? I might
That's
be
yen is
I might,
Japan. But China is expanding its influence into spheres that we used to control. It's because we look extremely weak at the moment.
I don't think look has anything to do with it. I think we are simply extremely weak at the moment. Fortunately, so is China. Like they are one generation away from total ethnic collapse.
Thing is, China's a dictatorship. So if the leader wants to do a thing, they're doing the thing. No negotiating about it.
Uh-huh.
Whereas we have to like argue for weeks, plan things out, make concessions from one party to another,
I mean,
figure out how to
hold
spend
on hold on a
millions of
minute.
dollars on bullshit.
I really hope I just to be clear, you're not actually defending dictatorship as a model.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that China, like, it's a horrible dictatorship, but because like it's basically run by the will of one man, it's
Unilateral
able to.
structures tend to be more efficient than complex bureaucracies. Is all we're saying.
Yeah, it's able to move faster than we are in the U.S.
Yeah, just needed to throw that save out there. Otherwise, they will quote mine for Hitler and Germany.
Anybody who watches this show should know how I feel about the Chinese communists.
Yeah, yeah. As I've often said, in the name of the people of China and the culture of China that I actually find very interesting, fuck the CCP.
Agreed.
For the
It's
glory of China, fuck the CCP is my general stance. Also, reinstall the legitimate government of China from Thailand into mainland China again.
Taiwan. It's the government of Taiwan.
Yeah, the legitimate government of China is in Taiwan when they should be in the mainland government, and thereby again fuck the CCP, and hopefully the government of Taiwan will one day resume the throne or mantle, I suppose.
You know, I also think that Trump had the right idea in trying to bring back you know more manufacturing to the United States and increase our energy production. Because if we are able to make things here and we have our own energy, then we basically have all of the leverage from a negotiating standpoint because we don't need anything from anybody else. We could want things, but we wouldn't need them. And when you don't need
Also,
something,
also, it is worth noting that we made the wrong call back in the 80s when we did start outsourcing manufacturing. We had the option of outsourcing it to China or to India. And I still to this day maintain we wouldn't be having half of these bullshit issues if we had gone with India instead of China.
I don't
Because
understand why we. I don't think we should have outsourced it at all. I mean,
well, I mean no, but if we were going to outsource, it should have been to India rather than China, because India is rooted in two things: Hinduism and the value system of the Anglosphere that it gained during British occupation, which means it's a hell of a lot more compatible with Western values than Chinese, the CCP, and communism.
I honestly think that we should have never started dealing with China in the first place. Like, people thought that exposing China to the Western world would cause them to liberalize. Yeah, that didn't work.
Arguably, it happened in reverse. Arguably, our exposure to them made us more inclined to think like them.
Also, it made us weaker when we have to negotiate, with a country that's doing absolutely terrible things.
And again, this certainly wouldn't be as much of a problem if we had if we had pumped even half the resources we pumped into China, into India, India would be a thriving first world country by now. The only the one of the only reasons it isn't already is because it doesn't have enough resources. And we know that because of how India reacted to British occupation relative to how China reacted um, to British association with Hong Kong. Which, by the way, free Hong Kong and fuck the CCP while we're making controversial anti CCP statements.
Again, I absolutely agree. But I think if we're gonna dig ourselves out of this hole here in America, what we need to do is really trim the fat on government spending, so we're not just throwing cash out there everywhere. But the problem is that the people who are feeding off the fat are friends of the politicians, which I've long argued that we need like just a reset of Congress.
Also, spend smarter, not harder, because we actually have the money to do all the things we need to do to make even the uh well, maybe not the AOC crowd, but at least Bernie circa 2016. We could make those type of people happy if we, instead of spending inordinate amounts of money on stupid earmark bullshit, we actually spent them on shit people actually could use or need. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to decrease spending in order to make this better. All we need to do is, I mean, we can decrease spending. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I'm saying if we also, in addition, just spent the money we are spending better, that would also solve 90% of this problem.
Also, we should stop funding things that we know don't work. Like, if there's a government program that is not producing any positive results or is in fact having a markedly negative result on society, just freaking end it. I
Also,
think
the
one of the
government shouldn't have a position on morality.
also I think one problem is that there are a lot of things that people allow in the U.S. that is very harmful to society, but it's legal, and it would be right to like say repeal certain things, but because people are so used to it in society, if people actually did try to get rid of it, people would throw an uproar, like the Roe v. Wade um, decision.
Which was literally built on lies. Regardless of what you think of abortion, and frankly, I'm somewhere in the middle, and I refuse to call myself either pro-life or pro-choice. Regardless of what you think of the actual issue of abortion, the case itself was built on lies, and the person who was the plaintiff in, or yeah, the plaintiff in the case actually admitted that it was built on lies, and she felt so guilty that she became a born again Christian.
Yeah, I remember reading that story. But yeah, one of the things that I was thinking of was like the alimony laws and no fault divorce, because like it serves no one that divorces are able to happen at the drop of a hat. Like, you're better off just never getting married then. Like, at this point, the only reason people get married is so that the woman can take half of a man's shit when she decides to leave.
And lest we forget, being as this is a men's rights show and all, some of this might be counterbalanced by actually giving some rights to men rather than just taking them away from women. Like I I know that is what baffles me. There are people in this world who would rather consider taking rights away from women than they would ever consider just giving those same rights to men. We would rather fuck over men so hard that we inadvertently also fuck over women than stop fucking over men for some reason. Like this is this is one of the main reasons I am a men's rights advocate, because it doesn't make sense to me. We could go backwards and start fucking over everyone equally, or we could just maybe the tiniest bit cease fucking over men. But no, we want men to be fucked over because otherwise, if men aren't fucked over, they're evil. If men are left to their own devices, or not.
There was I think I mentioned this before. There was this idea for you know how most child support payments go to women. Well, there was this idea. I believe it was like in Idaho where child support would be put on a card that limits what you can buy with it, kind of like government assistance.
Food stamps and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the woman would get the child support, but it would be on this card, and they could only spend it on certain things. So many women were upset by that.
Which tells me that you're not using said. Okay, now I get it to a degree because who the hell is the government to tell you what you may spend your money on and so forth? It's like the COVID thing of the non-essential good. Who the fuck are you to decide what is and is not essential in my specific case and so on?
I think there
But
should be certain things that are absolutely banned. Like you can't use buddy's child support money to buy alcohol or wine.
well, but yeah, that's the thing. It should be a fairly obvious paper trail of are you spending the money on yourself or are you spending the money on the child? If you're not spending the money on the child, then it is by definition not child support and therefore is inadmissible. That's the whole reason there's a difference between alimony and child support. Is alimony is supposed to be for the partner and child support is supposed to be for whatever product of that relationship exists after the
I don't
relationship
understand
is
why
ended.
alimony is even a thing. Like they say, like it's to keep the person in a level of lifestyle to which they become accustomed. Like you're an adult, get a job.
I mean, I don't mind alimony inherently, but I mind that it always, almost without fail, favors women over men
Well,
for
men on the
no
whole do.
adequately explained reason.
Well, men on the whole do make more money than women.
Right, but women tend to control equal or greater spending power than men, and let's be honest, many women, after they've cut off their previous partner, just get another partner, and then that partner starts buying them shit or fa- facilitating the lifestyle, quote unquote. Meanwhile, men very often become homeless over alimony payments and or not having anything like their same amount of resources, even though nominally and on paper they're the ones making the money. If the money goes to someone else, such that that person eventually becomes homeless or at the very least destitute, well, it's not as easy as she is the woman, therefore she makes less money, therefore give her all the money. It should at least be what needs does each party have. And if we care so much about the woman's lifestyle to which she has become accustomed, why is it no one bats an eye usually about the lifestyle to which the man is in any way accustomed, especially because he's the one goddamn working for it or to sustain
Yeah,
it?
a lot of the times between alimony and child support, a man can be left absolutely destitute. I would say, first of all, I don't believe alimony should be even a thing, but if you are going to make it a thing, make it 1 year. Give them 1 year to adjust their lifestyle, and after that, they're on their own because they're not a child, and you shouldn't have to support them for the rest of their lives.
And if one party does have to support the other for their entire lives, then maybe we should make alimony a two-way street, and then that might incentivize people to not get divorces because if we're both having to pay for each other regardless, why don't we just stay together and live in one household? That
Well, here's the
that would
thing, though.
probably be the outcome of that if we just made
Not only do they get
if we made
alimony,
alimony for both parties. then
But the thing though, not only a lot of times do they get alimony, but they also get like half your assets. So they're taking half of your shit that you have already, and then you have to then continue to pay them. Like you should, it should be 1 year of alimony, no assets.
it's a moral tithe though is the thing because the power of the woman card is sacred, the power of the man card is irrelevant to demonic, depending ranging from irrelevant to demonic, depending on what narrative we're going with today. And nobody ever wants to address that double standard at all. Again, rather than seeking to fuck over women and men, we could just try not fucking over men, given that we long since realized, hey, we shouldn't fuck over women. And yet somehow we're okay with basically treating men like the slave class, at least until the automation happens, and then we won't. And then ideally we won't have to do that anymore. But somehow I think the corporations will find a way of, even though we're essentially having the robots do what we would normally force men by way of extortion to do, men are still somehow going to be on the hook for it. I.e., we're going to wind up in a dystopian future where instead of having the robots do all the slave labor, we're still going to have some men doing the slave labor, and their labor is actually going to be worth less because of the robots. That's like that is the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is have the robots do the slave labor and have human beings only doing meaningful work. But I can only dream, apparently.
Yeah, but it just another thing, and this is especially regarding finances. Like, if you wanted a stronger economy, another thing you could do to help that would be to secure the border, to stop the continued flow of um, illegal cheap labor that's coming
Yeah,
from
to quote to quote
Mexico and
Bernie
South
to quote
America.
Bernie Sanders, circa 2016, open borders is a Koch brothers conspiracy theory to devalue the labor of the American worker. He was correct. He was correct. He immediately backpedaled because his own fan base decided not to support that, but he was correct in 2016 when he said that.
It just continues to baffle me how these people can have objectively the incorrect opinions, as in we now have the data on how these things work out and it's terrible,
You
and
are
yet they
now
continue
you
to cling to
are
them.
verifiably incorrect, yes.
Yet they continue to cling to them as if it's some sort of life preserver in the middle of the ocean.
Because it might be factually wrong, but it's morally correct, don't you know? That's the
If
that's
it's
the
fact,
mindset of every moral authoritarian. It doesn't matter how categorically I'm disproven. This is how the world should work, and I'm not acquiescing to how the world does work in the name of how it should work.
here's the thing though, it's not morally correct because if your problem is not, sorry, if your idea is not factually correct, then when you try to implement it to solve the problem, it's not going to work, which is only just going to cause more of the same problem, if not new ones, which is going to cause more suffering. So then it is not morally correct, nor is it factually correct.
Well, you see, in the mind of the moral authoritarian, if my morality can't be applied to the real world, then the world is wrong, and the world should be ashamed of itself for not living up to the standards of my abstract morality, don't you know?
Oh yes, it's immutable reality that's the problem.
Yeah, the world is just immoral, and it should be ashamed of itself.
Why do we have to share a country with these people?
I don't know. I don't know, but we do because we don't because we understand the reason you shouldn't just genocide anyone who disagrees with you, unlike some other people. Uh,
You know the most disturbing thing?
Hmm.
Their votes count just as much as ours.
More, depending on how many of them there are, and how much the votes get slanted on who the powers that be consider valid and who they consider invalid. Because I think think we've been doing this culture war thing for long enough to know we are definitely on the in the category of invalid, at least according to the powers that be. So when push comes to shove, they prefer these people's opinions over ours.
Well, considering how the powers that be continuously and evidently fail at their own responsibilities, should their opinions even matter?
No, but they do because they say so, and they're the ones who get to say so, apparently.
Well, this is just another nail in the coffin.
Existential black hole, ladies and gentlemen.
So,
Please don't mind the Lovecraftian abyss. Do not attempt to adjust your screens.
question: do you think this banking crash has hit bottom, or are we going to continue to fall yet further?
Oh no, it's just beginning. This is just the first couple of dominoes.
Part of me really would like to think that it's over, but
It's
you can only
again,
lie to yourself to such a degree.
this this isn't the this isn't the end all and be all of a crisis. This is essentially the first. Again, it's the first couple of dominoes in the line. I don't know what other dominoes will fall, and I don't know what the consequences of those will be, but I'm fairly certain we're just because what we're up to like three or four major banks that have fallen. That's nothing. It can and will be worse, ladies and gentlemen. But
Like,
in the meantime, we can laugh at the absurdity of this clown world we have. Because those are our only options. We can get really, really depressed or we can get really, really amused. And I, for one, choose to be amused.
yeah, it's either laugh or go mad. But
With the of course possibility of both, but at least on the way to both we can get a few more laughs in. So laugh. Laugh,
yeah,
damn it.
regarding the establishment, we knew that they were going to suck once they got back into power in 2021. Just you didn't have to burn everything down.
Ah, but they consider it a moral imperative to burn things down. Don't you know? When those things happen to be invalid according to their framework, which includes basically everything that is worthwhile in the world. Is that a bit true?
Yeah, it's like that one meme. Our expectations were low, but holy crap!
We we were expecting you to be terrible. We weren't expecting you to end the species.
Well, we've been at this for almost an hour. Do you have anything that you would like to talk about now regarding the current financial situation?
The best news that comes out of this is it will probably choke ESG scores to death. And the second ESG scores get choked to death, there will no longer be an enforcement mechanism for social justice, which means that maybe, just maybe, before the end, before all of this comes crashing down, we might get entertainment that's worthwhile back, and we might be able to actually save the franchises that we love that have been being fucked over for the last decade or so.
Yeah, I mean, if companies now have to survive on their own merits and they've injected themselves with so much ESG and DEI, hopefully they'll be allowed to die off on their own without being without having money pumped in to keep them afloat, and then we can get an actual readjustment of the marketplace, and then companies will rise up that actually care about how effectively they'll run, which will lead not only to a better economy but a better society because we're not, injecting politics and social justice and wokeness into every product on the shelves.
And better quality of the actual products, hopefully. Which means I might get an actual good Doctor Strange movie before I die. Please. Like, I'm not asking for much. I just want a good Doctor Strange movie. That's so much to. Mm. Different topic for a different day.
I would also like a good Thor movie, but I'm not holding my breath.
And I would love for a good Doctor Fate movie. I almost got it with Black Adam, and then Black Adam is non-canon anymore because why can't I have nice things? But eh. But before society crumbles and we all get doomed by the Leviathan, we might at least get good content back. That's that's your consolation prize. You you probably won't survive the next 10 years, but you will at least get your bread and circuses back, folks. And frankly, if it's to be a choice of the way the world is now with no bread and circuses and everything sucking, or everything sucking, but at least I have my bread and circuses, I will take the bread and circuses, please.
Yeah, I'll take the bread and circus too, but I would also like society not to collapse while I'm watching my movies.
I mean, ideally, we could have both. We could have our bread and circuses, and society wouldn't crumble, but beggars can't be choosers, I suppose, and we are definitely the beggars, according to the modern day aristocrats. And just like every other kind of beggar, they hate our fucking guts. Wouldn't you go ahead and know it? The more things change, the more they say the goddamn same. Except
Isn't that
Marie
the truth?
Antoinette actually had some empathy. These people have none. And yes, I realize I just compared you in a negative fashion to Marie Antoinette, but that's how far the modern day aristocracy has fallen from the previous one. The old aristocracy was better. Still wouldn't want an aristocracy, but if we must have one, I'm going with the old school one.
All right, I think this is a good place to wrap up.
Yep.
Have a good evening, everyone. I've been Mystery.
I've been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we have been the Duality of Man. Cheers, guys.
Bye, everybody.